The harder you try, the worse it gets. From Fyodor Dostoevsky. I think I'm saying that right. Fyodor, some shit like that. I think that sounds kind of like a Russian name, if you were to ask me. I don't know if I've actually reacted to any video of Fyodor. I think I have. I think I must have, right? Because he's a pretty popular dude in the realm of philosophy and stuff like that. He gets talked about a lot, I should say, from people who are into philosophy. Of course, Pursuit of Wonder. No, nothing new to the channel. You know, we're always here when he uploads. I have his book, The Art of Living a Meaningless Existence, which is actually a pretty good book. You guys should check it out. It's in the description right here. It's this one. But other than that, you know, I'm still a little bit sick. But besides that, who cares? Let's just enjoy. Let's see what it's about. Let's see what he has to say. Let's see what kind of words he's going to put into this. Let's see how he's going to describe the philosophy of Fyodor, and just learn with me, I guess. You know, I don't have that much to say. Hopefully you guys have an amazing day. And I hope you guys continue to have an amazing day. Or night, whenever you're watching this. Not sure. We don't discriminate. Let's go. Blinkist, of course. Shouts out to y'all for always sponsoring my mans. Consistently, bro. Blinkist is on this man's consistently, bro. They're fucking with the content. And I fucks with Blinkist. I've had Blinkist before. I don't want to pay for that subscription right now. I'm running a little bit. I'm like really broke right now, so I can't pay for it, sadly. But it's a really good app. You guys should check it out.
Sponsored by Blinkist, the app that condenses thousands of nonfiction books into 15-minute summaries. Use the link in the description and receive 1 free week and 25% off a premium membership.
25% off.
Fyodor Dostoevsky is widely regarded as one of the greatest novelists in history. His fictional work is so rich with deep insights into human psychology, particularly its interplay with various social and political structures of the modern world. He is equal parts renowned psychologist.
There's no text in this, so should I put on the captions for the sake of it?
With various social and political structures of the modern world. He is equal parts renowned psychologist and philosopher.
Yeah, so
his work brings into question how well we truly know ourselves, what we really want, and how we go about considering and attaining these things in the world, as well as the consequences of following false delusions and impossible ideals. His insights and warnings about humanity, both individually and collectively, were not only ahead of his time, but in many ways, they are still arguably unheeded warnings, immensely relevant to today.
Okay, how so?
Dostoevsky was born in 1821 in Moscow, Russia, to a well-off Orthodox Christian family. His father was a successful doctor, and his family lived on the hospital grounds where his father worked. While in his teens, however, his mother died of tuberculosis, and while Dostoevsky was away at school studying to become an engineer, his father died without definitive cause.
Oof.
Although it was reported and speculated that he was murdered by his own serfs in an act of vengeance against his abusive tendencies.
Sorry. Just so that there's no confusion here. What the fuck is a serf? I don't know what that is. A serf is an agricultural laborer bound under the feudal system to work in the lord's estate. So this is still feudalism. So this is the bourgeoisie. This is like, what, did they have feudalism in 1821? Is it a feudal system or something like that? Likely like a monarch, some shit like that, right? I don't think feudalism was around anywhere near 1800. When I picture feudalism, I'm thinking like 2,000 years ago. You know, like I'm thinking like a long time ago. I don't know though. I'm not the biggest economic, you know. Well, yeah, whatever.
Young Dostoevsky's proximity to the conditions of a hospital, his upbringing in a strong faith family, and the early deaths of both his parents, especially
I actually lived in a church, right? And instead of him, he lives in the little like nursery, pharmacy, whatever the fuck this is, little hospital thingy. I lived with my grandparents in a church. Which is fun.
Of the mysterious possible murder of his father, likely all culminated into some amount of the early foundation of what would go on to become his unique but tragic voice as a writer. After graduating from a military engineering institute, Dostoevsky would work as an engineer. However, as a means of engaging in his budding passion for literature and humanities, he also began translating books on the side during this time.
She
As
found
this
enough
passion
money.
for literature soon increased further and further.
He found enough time to translate books on the side, bro. Get you a Dostoevsky. My guy is the GOAT.
He would resign from his engineering career and focus solely on writing himself.
He's a GOAT. He
In
turned his side
1846,
hustle into
he
his
published his
passion.
first book, titled Poor Folk. Right away, this work received commercial success and was reviewed
Right
favorably by literary critics of the time, deemed as Russia's first social novel. However, Dostoevsky's subsequent works just following this one would struggle to find any similar level of success, and he soon found himself mostly just experimenting and failing as a writer, quickly falling into financial distress.
So nobody else had made a social critique at the time? Nobody else had made a public works of social issues? Nobody but Dostoevsky? It hadn't occurred to nobody? It's not like motherfuckers wasn't the only ones that was like struggling, you know? I mean, this doesn't even seem like he was struggling. It seems like he chose to work that job. Engineering? I bet you probably played very well. Bet you it did. A lot of times these people, you know, how Marx used to describe it is people are okay being tied and bound to their chains, as he called it, because of the fact that they are being sort of controlled-ish by what they can think, and sort of just by the intellectuals and all the people that teach them how to think, teach them how to frame the world and stuff like that. And that's why they can be okay with being in their chains. That's why they can be okay being slaves, is they don't think that they're slaves, right? Like, people are going to give you the types of words that you're going to be able to use to make sense of the world. And if they can do that, then they have ultimate power over you, because they can influence the way that you see everything. So then you don't see yourself as a slave, and they can keep you in conformity, and they can keep you doing the same shit, even if it might be brutal, completely slave work. You're not going to complain, you know, because the real power doesn't go to the kings. It's not in the, you know, it's not at the White House. The real power is in the scientists and the thought leaders at the time, you know, and the people who are going to decide how people think.
As a consequence of his financial situation, in 1847, while in his late 20s, Dostoevsky became associated with a radical group of writers and intellectuals focused on utopian socialism. This, however, would soon lead him to being arrested when the government went after those associated with these types of groups.
Damn.
In 1849, as punishment, Dostoevsky was sentenced to death by firing squad. On December 22nd of the same year, he stood facing the barrel of a gun pointed at his head. The remainder of his life was now counted in minutes. As the officials held their aim and steadied to pull the trigger, suddenly, at the last moment, a message arrived and Dostoevsky was pardoned. The execution would turn out to be a mock execution, used merely as a psychological tactic to instill fear in the prisoners. Following this, Dostoevsky was instead sent to Siberia, where he was forced to work grueling labor in horrible conditions for 4 years.
So it was all a gimmick. It was all, so he was never going to die. They just made the whole gimmick. And is this like when they used to do in public? Because it seems like there's people around, so there's people watching this. So when it's a public execution, that's even when it's worse. But damn, they really made a whole gimmick? That's tough, you know?
And the prisoners. Following this, Dostoevsky was instead sent to Siberia, where he was forced to work grueling labor in horrible conditions for 4 years.
Dang.
In 1860, Dostoevsky returned from Siberia,
but
returned a very different man.
Okay, how so?
He would soon begin writing again, but now his voice would contain a new tone of pessimism, realism, and a highly perceptive understanding of the human psyche. He was now turned away from utopian ideals of society, and instead, his focus was now turned inward, towards spiritual and psychological explorations.
Nice. So
over the following 20 years, before dying of a lung disorder in 1881, Dostoevsky would produce several successful masterpieces, many of which are still regarded as some of the most important works of literature to this day, including Notes from Underground, Crime and Punishment, The Idiot, Demons, and The Brothers Karamazov.
Crime and Punishment. I've heard about that one before. Crime and Punishment. See, I've heard about that one before. I've also heard about The Brothers Karamazov. That's a good one too.
One of the more prominent themes established in much of Dostoevsky's work was his insights on and assessment of human suffering. More particularly, the means by which and the consequences of humanity trying to overcome and rid itself of suffering, especially in relation to a time in which religious and spiritual anchors were cut loose and individuals and societies were left to create and defend their worldviews through an increasing thrust of rationality and technology toward the ideal of perfect well-being.
That's Descartes, bro.
In Notes from Underground,
Descartes already been dealt with that. You're like 200 years too late. Descartes been dealt with that. You know, Descartes, he was in that sea of doubt. You know what I mean? You're a little too late, 200 years.
1864, Dostoevsky explores and critiques these modern Western ideals, rationality and technological progress as a means toward perfect happiness and goodness. In the novel, we follow an unnamed retired civil servant, often referred to as the Underground Man, through a series of diary entries.
Okay.
The man is deeply angered and unhappy, and he possesses a disdain for others and the delusions in which others live. He wants to make other people see the truth and acknowledge the same discontent and absurdity he knows and feels in life.
Well, truth is
for Dostoevsky, suffering is a fundamental tenet of human life. It is infused in the blood. Thus, there is no life, nor social or material condition for life that can exist without suffering. And so, for Dostoevsky, all efforts and accomplishments of progress...
Something I like is how popular the pessimistic philosophers always get. It's always the pessimistic ones, isn't it? It's always the ones that are just like, have a grim outlook on life that people can really relate to.
Individually and collectively, can merely change the particular things that we derive our suffering from, but cannot eliminate our suffering comprehensively. Man only likes to count his troubles. He doesn't calculate his happiness, wrote Dostoevsky.
That's facts.
For Dostoevsky, since there can never be a social or material structure that rids humanity of unhappiness or suffering, any objective of improving the world toward an idealistic, utopian version of itself is doomed to fail. Through The Underground Man, Dostoevsky largely critiques and warns about humanity pursuing these sorts of ideals while operating within the increasingly prevalent worldviews of nihilism, utopianism, rationalism, and egoism, which essentially culminate into the beliefs that there is no inherent or transcendent meaning to life, and that actions and morality should be based on reason and knowledge, with self-interest as the driving force. Dostoevsky argued, however, that with a void of religious faith and a deeply flawed, irrational human nature, this worldview would become destructive. In the process of resolving suffering toward perfection, solutions to old problems will inevitably create new problems in need of new solutions. And the more grandiose the solutions, the more complex and perhaps destructive the new problems.
Consumerism.
This is not necessarily to say that efforts of social, technological, or self-improvement are useless or inherently bad, but rather they are not capable of attaining what they often set out to accomplish. And if not considered within the constraints of the human condition, their incessant motion can serve to only fan the flames of problems. In Notes from Underground, Dostoevsky wrote, "Now I ask you, what can be expected of man since he is a being endowed with strange qualities? Shower upon him every earthly blessing, drown him in a sea of happiness, so that nothing but bubbles of bliss can be seen on the surface. Give him economic prosperity, such that he should have nothing else to do but sleep, eat cakes, and busy himself with the continuation of his species. And even then, out of sheer ingratitude, sheer spite, man would play you some nasty trick. He would even risk his cakes and would deliberately desire the most fatal rubbish, the most uneconomical absurdity, simply to introduce into all this positive good sense his fatal fantastic element. It is just his fantastic dreams, his vulgar folly, that he will desire to retain, simply in order to prove to himself, as though that were so necessary, that men still are men, and not the keys of a piano." For Dostoevsky, humanity is irrational and incessantly desires a sense of self-agency, not perfect happiness. Thus, even if a perfect life or society in which happiness could be of a formulaic ease to everyone, humanity would rather go mad or destroy its perfect conditions than live as if it fit into a mechanical system.
So, wait, so what's his argument there? He's saying even if we had the chance to live a perfect life, we wouldn't? even if we had a chance to live in a utopia, maybe we wouldn't. We would just like cause chaos and rebel.
There's a sense of self-agency, not perfect happiness.
So
Thus, even if a perfect life or society in which happiness could be of a formulaic ease to everyone, humanity would rather go mad or destroy its perfect conditions than live as if it fit into a mechanical system. We think we want happiness, but we don't. Not really. We know this every time we could be happy but aren't. Every time we find something to dwell on or complain about or sabotage. Our conscious mind appears to tell us that we want happiness and peace with perfect equality, but our whole being, our behaviors, our history, show us that we, quite often, want the opposite. We don't know ourselves as well as we think, and often when we do, we struggle to accept the truth.
There's 3 different parts of the brain.
In Dostoevsky's subsequent masterpiece, Crime and Punishment, published in 1866, he further explores this notion of self-knowledge, or the lack thereof. The novel centers around a young former law student living in poverty named Rodion Raskolnikov. Raskolnikov's mother and sister are sacrificing a great deal to try and help Raskolnikov's situation and facilitate his success. His sister even setting up to marry a wealthy man in order to help. This, however, all further upsets and shames Raskolnikov. Additionally, he is deeply affected by a nihilistic, rationalistic, and atheistic view of the world. Because of his views, without needing to answer to any religious or spiritual principles, Raskolnikov decides to kill and rob a wicked, abusive, old pawnbroker woman whom he has become aware has a lot of cash. He believes that moral decisions ought to be based on what one can determine, through reason, produces the highest net good on society, or the greatest happiness for the largest number of people. Because of this, he believes that he deserves the money more than the old woman, as he can do far more good with it. He can help his sister and mother, and he can become a lawyer, and can then go on to do even more good in the world. Moreover, he thinks of himself as an individual of greatness, powerfulness, and ruthlessness, and in his mind, extraordinary men are allowed to commit crimes for the common good. And so, he is able to rationally justify murder, and he proceeds to kill the pawnbroker, and then her half-sister when she walks in during the act. Throughout the rest of the novel, Raskolnikov finds himself tormented and riddled with guilt and horror because of his actions. He is not who he thought he was. He is not a man of ruthless power. He is a tender and feeling man. Eventually, he turns himself into the police in order to essentially avoid going insane.
What a bitch!
Through Raskolnikov's guilt and torment, Dostoevsky critiques the notion of reason and self-interest as complete methods of determining morality and selfhood. Raskolnikov had every reason to do what he did, and yet...
So that's where the problem lies. If you don't have religion, please, I don't think, what do you call it? Like, ethics and morality, I don't think it stems from religion. I think religion is a good gateway for it. I think it's a good like launching platform for it. It's probably one of the most popular ones, maybe one of the most effective and powerful ones, because when people feel obligated and obliged and they feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves, and they have a sense of belonging, and they're like, look, I want to make God happy, I want to do all this, I want to do all that, just because I know this is making the Lord happy, blah, 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 blah. Like, there's a lot of reasons to act good whenever you're a Christian. Now, if you're not a Christian, then, you might have some implications there. But you also wouldn't, because, you don't have to be, like, not every atheist is going around just killing and robbing people, because they do have a moral compass, they do have a conscience. They understand, social behavior, and they understand what's frowned upon, and they understand what's not right, what's wrong, and what's illegal for very good reasons. Like, we don't kill people because it's just like, well, it's kind of, I don't really need to explain that, and I don't think you necessarily need religion for that. I think you can find other ways to feel a part of something bigger than yourself, because this is a lot of that's going on that we don't understand. And just because we're a part of that means that, we're always a part of something bigger than ourselves, each and every one of us. But it's not necessarily just God or something that we made up or created just to try to simplify and make sense of the world. It's like we genuinely are a part of something greater than we could ever understand. That's the only thing, is we're a part of something that we probably might never get to fully understand. And that's kind of a tough thing to come to terms with. It's like that might cause some tension for a lot of people. And Not a lot of people are willing to have that. They want simplicity. They just want to believe. They're in an echo chamber, confirmation bias. They just want to believe and only listen to information that feeds on what they already believe and reinforces their shit and stuff like that. So this is something I always wondered with philosophers at this time, who always wanted to know, well, what do we do without God? Well, I feel like I am a little bit silly because, well, yeah, that's a lot of people that believe in it. And to just completely have it ripped away in a movement, like really rather fast, sort of in a rather fast pace and in a fast way, I can't see how it might cause problems. But religion isn't the only place where you can get ethics and moral acting. It's not like you're only acting that way because of Christianity, Why not just take the bits that you feel are useful and then get rid of the rest? You can do that.
What he did was wrong, and it causes him to feel immense pain and suffering. Like in Notes from Underground, Dostoevsky is again critiquing the views of nihilism, utilitarianism, rationalism, and egoism, in which all faith and relevance is placed solely on the individual, and all efforts to maximize a life and society are done through self-interest and rationality.
Okay.
Also, like in Notes from Underground, Crime and Punishment focuses on the complexity of the human mind and how we, as the conscious observers and orators of who we think we are often detached from and inconsistent with who we really are. Moreover, our perception of who others are is often even further removed from the truth. Dostoevsky not only shows how Raskolnikov has a completely inverted, false self-perception, but he also allows the reader to relate to and empathize with Raskolnikov, a cold-blooded murderer. Rather than purely showing how a bad character becomes bad, Dostoevsky shows how a bad character isn't purely bad, and is, in many ways, a lot like us, extremely confused and misguided by the conflict of their inner psyche and their misunderstanding of said psyche. For us all, the complex interplay between our conscious mind, unconscious mind, and the world outside of ourselves is chaotic, muddled, contradictory, and perhaps impossible to ever truly understand. None of us are that far from those we fear or dislike. In them is some amount of us, and in us is some amount of them. We don't know ourselves as well as we think. We chase things that we don't want, and we often dread what we truly want. We are far less rational than we think. We exhibit a sort of madness every day in every generation. Christianity and idealistic philosophies set us up to fail. Science cannot save us, and technology is not a means to escape our problems, but merely an efficient transformation of them. Dostoevsky believed all this to be the case, and arguably, on at least some level, he was right. However, at the end of Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov is in prison, serving just an 8-year sentence for doing good deeds.
Damn!
The novel ends alluding to the prospect that Raskolnikov's story will continue, suggesting Dostoevsky's belief that through suffering, faith, acceptance, compassion, and repentance, redemption is still possible. Although Dostoevsky's work is largely dark and tragic, it also contains this sort of epilogue of redemption in spite of itself, at least redemption of a sort. In his novel, The Idiot, published in 1869, through the main character, Prince Mishkin.
These philosophers and the titles of their books, let me speak to y'all, bro. I want to speak to y'all because I really want to know who is out here like giving the A-OK. Who's passing this? Who's giving this the A-OK over at the printing press? Who's giving this the thumbs up? Who's allowing Nietzsche to write the gay science? Why do you call it the gay science? I don't know that. I'm sure probably a lot of people probably know it. It might be more obvious than I think. I never searched it up though. What is this one called?
Novel The Idiot.
Man, The Idiot. Now we got the gay science, an amazing book. And now we got The Idiot, which I'm sure isn't even, another amazing book. Like, what are these titles?
Published in 1869, through the main character, Prince Mishkin, Dostoevsky reflects on some of his own personal experiences and ideals in life. In one instance, Prince Mishkin discusses an anecdote about a man recounting having been arrested and sentenced to a mock execution by firing squad, mirroring almost exactly Dostoevsky's own experience many years prior. Prince Mishkin says, "He had about 5 minutes left to live. not more.
Oh, this is sick.
He said
Imagine
those
being
5
able to
minutes
write
seemed
this.
like an endless time to him, an enormous wealth. He reckoned up the time for bidding his comrades farewell and allotted 2 minutes to that, then allotted 2 more minutes to thinking about himself for the last time, and then to looking around for the last
What do you think
time.
about yourself in that
He was
situation?
dying at the age of 27, healthy and strong. Bidding farewell to his comrades, he remembered asking one of them a rather irrelevant question and even being very interested in the answer. Then, after he had bidden his comrades farewell, the 2 minutes came that he had allotted to thinking about himself. He knew beforehand what he was going to think about. He kept wanting to picture to himself as quickly and vividly as possible how it could be like this. Now he exists and lives, and in 3 minutes, there would be something, some person or thing, but who and where? He wanted to resolve it all in those 2 minutes. There was a church nearby, and the top of the cathedral with its gilded dome shone in the bright sun. He remembered gazing with terrible fixity at that dome and the rays shining from it. It seemed to him that those were his new nature, and in 3 minutes he would somehow merge with them. The ignorance of and loathing for this new thing that would be and would come presently were terrible. Yet he said that nothing was more oppressive for him at that moment than the constant thought, what if I were not to die? What if life were given back to me? What infinity, and it would all be mine. Then I'd turn each minute into a whole age. I'd lose nothing. I'd reckon up every minute separately. I'd let nothing be wasted. He said that in the end this thought turned into such anger in him that he wished they would hurry up and shoot him.
I can see that, because you don't really get to fully appreciate and take the grasp of something until you lose it, You don't appreciate the mundane normality of life until you're losing it, until you don't have it anymore, or until it's been really hindered in some type of way, like you don't appreciate that kind of stuff. You just kind of say it's whatever, and then you only focus on the bad stuff because you have a tendency to focus on and magnify the negative. We are totally biased towards the negative. The negative just has much more of an impact on us. But as you can see here, even in your last moments of breath, you're just thinking, you're thinking what this guy's thinking, if you're a philosopher. But it's also like just taking in your last minutes. And that's a really crazy thing to think about. Like, imagine being in that act. Imagine knowing you have somebody aiming a gun at you and they're probably gonna shoot you. Like, it's tough. It's definitely quite the situation to be put in. And for him to come out of that and just come out just writing fucking literature still about his experiences, that's crazy. I'd reckon every minute separately, I'd let nothing be wasted. He said that in the end, this thought turned into such an anger in him that he wished they would just hurry up and shoot him. Dang.
In this, Dostoevsky arguably alludes to the idea that although life is so often tragic, purity and perfect goodness is impossible and suffering is fundamental. The conscious awareness of being but moments away from losing it all is so overwhelmingly horrible that one would literally rather hurry up and die than steep in the knowledge of just how beautiful everything truly is and that they are just about to lose it all forever. Whether we agree with Dostoevsky or not, his deep insights and brilliant works of literature can help remind us and allow us to feel the same beauty and depth in life while there's still time.
While there's still time. So you can take that and what?
Can help remind us and allow us to feel the same beauty and depth in life while there's still time.
That's what you do at your time of dying. While you still got time, while you're still here. Know that if you were not here,
this video was sponsored.
This is what the fuck
he said,
you be doing.
Life mental. The conscious awareness of literally rather moments away from losing it all is so overwhelmingly horrible that one would literally rather hurry up and die than steep in the knowledge of just how beautiful everything truly is and that they are just about to lose it all forever.
Well, let me know what you guys think, guys. I took some NyQuil before this. If you guys couldn't tell, I'm getting a little bit tired. I'm getting a little bit sleepy. I was really kind of starting to doze off there at the end. Not because it's boring, but generally because I took that shit. So wow, I got really tired during that. I'm sorry. But I hope you guys learned something new. The philosophy of Fyodor Dostoevsky, which I found very entertaining. But let me know what you guys think. If you made it all the way through to the end, leave a comment and do all that good stuff. And I'll like it. I'll pin it. Whatever. You're the GOAT if you did. I appreciate you. That's about it. After that, he just talks about his Blinkist membership. They might have some from this.
Nietzsche, I Am Dynamite by Sue Prideaux, and The Story of Philosophy by Will Durant. Philosopher.
Yeah, Blinkist do got some goated. They do have some goated options though. But I'll catch you guys there, man. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.